Hello and welcome to XVD Bibles. My name is Ethan. So this will be part 5 in my series on how to rebind a Bible from start to finish. So today we're going to start getting into the really interesting stuff, which is raised hubs. So I'm going to go through the process of how I do raised hubs on a Bible rebind. Today we're going to be following along with that same Bible that you have been seeing so far. This is the fully skived, Navy Horween Chrome Excel cover that we've been working on thus far. So you didn't see like the complete skiving process. I just showed all 4 corners and then one of the edges. But this is what it looks like when it's fully skived. You can see there that I did skive like up into the leather that will eventually be the cover, which is what I normally do. You can see a little bit here that there's a little spot where I cut through, but that's going to be cut off. Remember when we cut this leather, I added about 1/16 to the height of this leather. So that's going to be cut away. So it's not going to be a problem at all. So let's go ahead and get into the process of doing our hubs. But first, I'm going to remark my center line here. So I need the center line to be, all the way up to the edge of my cover leather. All right. All right, so I use a material for my hubs. I use for the actual hub part of the leather. So here's a good example of what we're going to be doing today. Obviously, minus the stamping. So this is a cover that is really needs to be glued. That's the next big step with this one. So this is what we're going to be working on today. This piece of material here, and then the backing material actually behind the hubs. So I use 2 different types of material for my covers. I use an imitation leather lace for the actual hub portion, and this right here to back the flat sections. So this is a material called Craftex, and this is specifically the washed Craftex. You will see online that there's a different type of Craftex called unwashed, and I used unwashed for a few Bibles, and I eventually transitioned over to washed Craftex. The main difference is that washed Craftex is a lot more flexible, but if you can make a really good Bible with unwashed Craftex, and I have done that. So it's not the end of the world if you use like the unwashed stuff. But just know that the washed is better than the unwashed. So this is what we'll be working with today. And this is what, obviously minus the stamping, this is what we'll be doing. What we'll be doing today. So, all right. So, the piece of Craftex that we need to cut is the height of the text block, and then the width of the spine plus a little bit of extra. So the reason why you need to add a little bit of extra is you can actually see it in this diagram here. If you remember this from a previous part. When you go to make your cover, the tabs that are underneath that are folded and attached to your text block, they functionally add a little bit of width to your spine. So when we go to make our Craftex backing for our spine, it needs to be a little bit more than the true width of our Oxford Hollow. If you don't do that, If you don't do that, your hub backing material will look too narrow, and your hub backing material won't go to the very edge. It won't look like it's going to the very edge of your cover, because you need to compensate for that. I can try to put in a picture of a Bible that has that issue, and you just need to add a little bit of extra to your spine backing material. So let's go ahead and get started here. So to get my width, I usually just use a little Post-it note here, wrap it around my text block, around my spine like this, and then I just mark it. Let's see. So in terms of how much extra to add, I would add, let's see. I would add about 1/16 to the total width. That's about how much. So you want to be adding about 1/32 to each side, which obviously adds up to 1/16. So that's what I've been doing for the past few Bibles, and I've really gotten my hub backing material and my Craftex backing material to be really spot on. So you need to add about 1/32 to each side. So here I'm just going to go over my Oxford Hollow, what I think is about 1/32. And obviously this paper needs to be tight and bent around the cover to get this measurement exact. So I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's good. So this will be kind of our width. This will be the width of our Craftex here. All right. And for the height, I just I cut a section that I know is wide enough, or I cut a section that I know is long enough, and then I normally just cut it down to size once I have that width. So let's go ahead and do this here. So when you do stuff like this, you always want to dry fit it to make sure it looks right. Because I have, cut my Craftex and then realize like that kind of looks too narrow or that kind of looks too wide, and you always want to dry fit everything. So that looks about perfect. Hopefully you can see that, here at the top there's a little bit of overhang. And here at the bottom, there's a little bit of overhang. Yeah, you can definitely see that small amount of overhang, and that's what we want. So now we'll cut it for height. So I just put it up to my, the front here, make sure it's nice and aligned, and cut it. I need to make sure first and foremost that, my top angle here is perfect right angle. And then I can, line this guy up here. Now getting the height isn't as critical as getting the proper width, because, if you're like 1/16 or, an eighth of an inch off, on your height, that's not the end of the world. But if your width is off, your spine will look kind of funky. So, all right. So this is our backing material for our spine on this Bible. So the way I do this, and this is new information for my subscribers, I changed the way that I did my hubs since my previous video on it. I have been doing the Craftex way, which most rebinders use this material for backing. In my previous video, I glued my hub backing material directly onto my cover, tooled that down, and then I added, a craft paper backing on top of it once that was fully dry. So I found that this way that I'm doing it currently is better, because So I actually wanted to pull out a Bible to one of my completed Bibles to explain why this new way is better. So when I did this Bible, I was using my old method, and that method involved tooling before you do your raised hubs, tooling a line down your cover tooling a line down your cover the width of your spine. And that tool line is pretty difficult to nail and pretty difficult to get exactly right. And if you don't do it right, if you don't do it perfectly, you're going to have a tool line that falls on your spine instead of right on the edge of your spine and your cover. And you can actually see that here. So this tool line right here, you can see going all the way up and down, is where I thought my spine, that's where I thought my spine and my cover would exactly fall, but obviously I got it a little bit off and I didn't do it wide enough. And doing it this way, doing it the way I'm currently doing it, is a lot better because you can kind of avoid that ugly tool line, and it's a more accurate way to really get the width of your spine, for the purpose of doing your tooling and all of that. So yeah, I've been doing it a different way, and the way you're going to see it today is even more different than what I did on this Bible. I used Craftex. To back like the actual raised hub portion, which is why these look so flat. But I like the more rounded topped look, which is what I've been doing since. I think I did this one in January of 2025, and I think my January Bibles were the only Bibles that had flat topped hubs, and I've been doing round topped hubs ever since. So yeah, I think this new method is better, and it helps you get a more aesthetically pleasing spine in my opinion. So, oh goodness, I have like a chest cold, and I've been just hacking so much recently. So this is going to be my my spine backing material. And we can go ahead and get started on how I space my hubs. So I've been spacing my hubs for the same way for probably 30 Bibles at this point. And I confidently believe that this is the best way. And there's kind of two big ways to do hubs in terms of like how to space them. You can either space them the same width on every Bible and change how many hubs you do, or you can do the same number of hubs on every Bible, and obviously you would then need to space them according to the height of your cover. So a lot of rebinders who do this a lot more than me. Like I've seen Jeremiah Payne in a couple of his videos. He just standardly does, I believe it's 1 inch wide tooling on most of his Bibles, and that's definitely a good way if you're doing a lot of Bibles. It's best to do that and faster to do that, because you can have something like this where you have a ruler. That's your desired width of your either your tool marks or your raised hubs, and you can use this as a guide and just mark on each side, all the way down, however many hubs you want. But the way I do it is that I do 5 hubs on all of my Bibles unless people request otherwise. And I also do I do equally spaced. I do hubs that are spaced according to the width of the cover and not like a singular. Like I don't do 1-inch hubs on every Bible. I do the width between the hubs. Just depends on the height of the cover. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I was kind of rambling there, but so I'll explain how I do that. I showed that in my previous hubs video. But there's going to be some difference here. So definitely lock in and figure, try to follow along here. So, the first thing we need to do is mark our first and last hub. And this is, perfectly square all around. So it doesn't matter which side goes up. So when I do a cover, so again, this piece of black craft text here, this is going to be the exact height of your text block. And so where this falls right here, that is where your yap starts. So your text block is going to fall in between and your yap starts here. So what I do is I put my top hub 1/2 inch down, because you don't want because of how this backing kind of all constructs together in the final product. You don't want your top hub to be directly on the edge of your craft text. You want it to be down a little bit. So I do 1/2 inch standardly on like normal size Bibles. And then, since I do my branding down here, I put my last hub, what was it? I have it written down here. I put my last hub 3/4 inch from the bottom of my craft text here. So that's what we're doing today. That's what we're doing right now. So we're measuring for the top hub and the bottom hub. So obviously if you're following along, doing a rebind yourself, you can obviously do more or less if you think that is, if that's what you want to do. I'm not an authority on Bible rebinding in any way. I'm just showing you how I do it. And you can choose to innovate. You can choose to innovate or do exactly what I do. It's up to you. All right. This is one of those craft squares. Those it's not a craft square. It's a quilting square. I have a bunch of these in different sizes, and I found that they're just so handy. So handy to have around because they have a lot of handy markings on them. They're not good for measuring because they often don't have, I think these are 16ths, but most of them don't have like marked, 16ths. So I don't use them for measuring. I use them for like right angles and such. So this is going to be our top one. This is going to be our bottom one. So let's go ahead and go through how I do my spacing. So I showed this in my previous video. So I do my spacing with little strips of measuring paper. And this is just, in my experience, this is way easier than like doing a measurement. Doing a measurement and like dividing by 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. Because when you're dividing by that level, often you go down into the 30 seconds, and that's just kind of a pain to work in. That's kind of just a pain to work in. So I do it this way. So we have the correct first and last and first hub, and now we need to get the middle hub, and then we need to divide this into 4 equal sections, 1 middle hub, and then cut that that distance in half on either side. So what I use is just a piece of paper like so, mark it, and then divide that in half to get my middle hub distance. And then divide that in half again. Actually, it's a little bit easier to do it this way. Nice and quick. All right, so now I need to mark this. So I found that it is very essential to spend some time making sure that your hubs are equally spaced. Make sure the lace or whatever material you use to actually back the hub portion is at a perfect right angle. Because this is kind of laying the foundation for a really nice looking spine. So if you when we're about to glue some lace onto this on these white lines. So if that lace is not straight, your hubs are not going to be straight either. So I'll show you some tips and tricks on how to get this nice and level and straight and all that. So here we go. Let's just go ahead and get into it here. This is the lace I use for backing my hubs. It's very thin. I think it's like 2.7 millimeters thin, and it's squishy, which means that when you tool this down, it gives a nice like rounded topped hub, which is why I use it. So, and I you know me, I obviously don't measure this because measuring is error prone. So I'm going to cut this material a little bit long, and then I'm going to cut it down exactly to the width of my Craftex once it's already glued. So get my glue here. And for this, you really don't need a lot. If you have glue squirting out everywhere, that's not what you want. All right, so my trick for getting this level is using some of these quilting squares. So I use this bigger one here, and line it up on one of the lines so that I know, so that I have a right angle. And then what I do is I take my other one here and essentially like work this down like this. Press on top, press down, so that I'm pressing this lace against this perfect right angle. And this is how I make sure this lace is perfect. And that is good. So now I know, because I was pushing against that perfect right angle, that this is good. So we'll just go ahead and move on here. A little bit of glue. Get my nice right angle here. Oop, that wasn't good. Here. All right. And if you're wondering out there, I can see where my line is. It's probably hard. My like white line is here. I can see where that is through the glue. It's probably hard to see that on the camera. But I use such a small amount of glue, relatively speaking, that it's pretty much transparent on my Craftex, so I can see where that line is, and I know that I'm putting my lace on the right spot. Like if you're using so much glue that you can't see your mark line, your white mark line, then that's too much glue. So. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? That's going to get in my way. I tried a couple times of like putting nice little lines of glue on every spot and then doing all of my hubs one after the other, and that just ended up being a mess. So I don't do it that way anymore. I just do one line of glue at a time. So again, the more time you spend on this process, getting these little pieces of lace perfectly right here, the more time you spend here, the more aesthetically pleasing your cover is going to be, and the more straight and perfect your hubs are going to look like on your final product, your final Bible. So the amount of time that you spend gluing these really well is worth it. See, if I was to just put this on and roll with that, look how wiggly that is. That would make an ugly spine. If I just tooled my cover leather to that piece of lace, that is really wobbly. Not what I want. Not what I want. So I can fix that. Again, pushing my lace against my right angle. And oftentimes glue you can see glue here kind of squirting underneath this ruler here. So when you pull this bottom one off, it's good to have some pressure on the top of your hub so that it doesn't pull out of place. And there we go. Some nice straight hubs. And now obviously we need to let this dry a little bit. This doesn't take very long to dry. I would say 15 or 20 minutes. But before it like fully dries, we can go ahead and like cut the extra. So the trick with this is that you want to cut kind of at an angle. So this part is going to be the part that glues down to my cover leather. So this, when you're looking at the spine of the Bible, this part is the part that you're actually seeing. So you need these hubs to be kind of like scalloped or like rounded on this side, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. So what I do is I press down here like this and then cut at an angle this way. And I found that this is plenty of rounding to get a nice hub here. So when I was doing my old method, where I cut pieces of lace and glued them directly onto my cover leather and then tooled them down, I had issues with my lace being inconsistently wide. Like one piece would be short, one piece would be long, etc. And if you're doing it this way, ever since I started doing it this way, I have not had hub backing material on my final, like when I go to tool, be inconsistently wide or inconsistently short. This like really guarantees that all of your hubs are the same exact width, which is why I think this is a superior method. So here we go. This is ready. Once this dries, this is ready to glue down and actually start the tooling process. And if you were binding multiple Bibles that were exactly the same, you could have like multiple widths worth of craft text with extra wide pieces and then just cut them all down. But I've never, rebound two Bibles that are exactly the same side by side, so I haven't done it that way, but that would be a good way if you are doing it that way. So I'm going to give this about 15 minutes to dry, and then we can go on with tooling our cover. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, we are back. I've waited about 15 or 20 minutes, and this little piece of material here has fully dried, and we are ready to start like the real fun part, which is doing the actual tooling. So here's our cover. I will say the first thing that we need to do is mark a center line on this piece of material here, because we're going to use that center line to align it to our cover. So the way I do that is, grab our slip of paper. You can use the same one or a different one. Same one or a different one as before. And I guess I could have used those markings, but whatever. So actually, just fold this guy. Fold it. Mark it. All right. On to the real fun part. So the first thing we need to do is put some glue on this side, and then we're gonna stick this down and start the tooling. So got some PVA glue here. So as with most things bookbinding related, there's kind of a sweet spot with how much glue to add here. Too much glue and you'll kind of saturate the saturate the craft text, and when you go to tool against it, it'll be kind of mushy feeling. That's not what you want. So just play around with it and figure out which works best. So a couple tips for this. You need your glue to be all the way up to the edge of your craft text, but you don't want it to be super thick on the edge because it'll gush out onto your cover leather, which is not what you want. And you also need you need the glue. You need the glue to be right up to your lace. Don't be afraid to get glue on your fingers. Gluey fingers are just they're a rite of passage, you could say. You could use a paintbrush for this, but I've started to use more Q-tips for glue spreading because I don't want to have to wash brushes. So that's why I use Q-tips. You also want to make sure you have glue on the top of your hub material. So depending on the type of leather you're using, I'm gonna go this way. So depending on the type of leather you're using, you want to make sure that your top hub is where you want it to be in terms of like how you have your cover like oriented. Horween Chrome Excel doesn't really have much variation in the leather, so that's not going to matter. But yeah, you want to make sure your hubs are oriented the right way if you care about that. Oh crap, I forgot to do something. I need to mark my yap line, which I can do quickly just this way. So forgot to do that. I needed to mark where my top and bottom hub needed to go. This looks right. Let me just see. Yeah, that's right. I've never forgotten to do that before until I started recording myself doing this. So, all right, now we're gonna put our craft text onto our cover and make sure that it's centered on our center line and in between our yap marks. All right, now we just kind of lightly press in the center so that the glue starts adhering. But obviously the majority of our work is going to be on the other side. So all right. Now onto the tooling. So you need clean fingers for this, short fingernails. So I like pressing in kind of the flat parts in the middle first here, and kind of figuring out where you need to figure out where your raised hubs are. Figure out where the edge of your craft tex is. Your fingertips are really the best, assuming you don't have like gangly fingernails. Your fingertips are really the best thing to use with Horween, because this leather scratches so easily. Like there's almost no way that like the tips of your fingers are going to scratch this leather unless you have some crazy calluses or something. Now a little bit of glue squirting out like that is okay. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is a tooling. This was originally for, I think it was like carving wax. I wrapped it in grip tape so that it's not, so it's easier to hold. And I'm going to use, where is it? This is another little, I think it's like clay tool. So first thing I want to do is tool down the side of my craft tex, like so that you know where it is. So here's where these little crafting squares come in handy. So you want to make sure you're tooling, when you tool, you want to make sure like the little edge of your tool is like kind of at a 45-degree angle, like towards your lace, to make sure you're really pressing. You need to make sure you're actually like really pressing your leather into your hub backing material. And I use these to press up against my hubs in order to help the leather flex. I need these tooled down a little bit more. Here we go. So when I press this quilting square in here, I'm making sure that it is a perfect right angle to where this craft tex, the edge of this craft tex is, because I want to make sure that all of my hubs are square. Oof. Sorry. Kind of knocked down my little ramp here, so I need to kind of buff that part out, but using my fingers to kind of pre-tool this part right here, because as soon as you put an edge, even like a well-polished leather tooling tool against Horween Chrome Excel, the mark is going to be permanent, so you need to make sure that when you go to put a tool against Horween, it's in the right spot. Looks great. So when I bought this tooling tool originally, I have a link to them in my materials list. There's so many tools out there that you can use to work with leather. Tools that are originally used for pottery, tools that are originally used for leather. The one thing to just be aware of is that if you're going to use it for a leather like Horween, you need to make sure that the actual edge of your tool is very, like, you can see how shiny mine is. That's because you can see how you can see like rough machining marks right here, but right towards the tip, you see how shiny it is? It's because I took some 1500 grit sandpaper and really knocked out all of the ugly tooling marks from the manufacturing process. Then I took some polishing compound that I use for, sharpening my scythe knife. And I really polished the edge of it, which is what you want to do. Don't buy like a clay tool, cheap clay tool from Amazon, and then immediately start using it for leather. You want to make sure that it doesn't have any like really sharp edges on it, because it might cut your leather. Oh crap! Dang it! Buff that out. That was a mistake. Yeah. Whoop. So having these tool lines, when you back your hubs this way, obviously, like, it's somewhat for aesthetic reasons, but the main benefit of having like some nice tool lines here are for the purpose of stamping. Like it helps you center your stamping. But when you go to do this process, sometimes sometimes the tooling around your hubs it becomes wonky. So I do like to, once this sets a little bit, just kind of repress in your tooling a little bit. All right, that looks pretty great, if I do say so myself. Nice and even, nice and narrow. They do have a nice rounded height to them. So yeah, these are going to make a beautiful Bible. So the next thing I'm going to do is do like extra tooling around all of these hubs. I wasn't planning on doing this originally, but I did tell one of my subscribers and longtime customers that I would show how to do like the extra tooling around hubs. So what I use is this little ruler here, and I put it up against my hubs like so, and hold it here and use this as a guide for my extra tooling. So go ahead and show you how I do that. Let's see. Oh, actually, let me use this ruler instead. Put this guy here like this. So the trick is to do it lightly at first, and then you can go back with a ruler to really get those lines deeper after. Actually, I'm going to just go on either side. So whoever gets this CSB is going to have some nice extra hub tooling, and that's normally not for me, but for most rebinders, that is extra. If anyone out there really likes the look of this extra tooling, I can do it on your Bible for free. Just let me know. So again, that's not the full depth yet. I'm just spacing, doing this initial line for spacing reasons. Now I did go down off of my craft text a little bit, and I can use my tooling tool to kind of buff that little section out. Excuse my head. Looks pretty great. A couple places to buff out a little bit, but that doesn't have to be the focus of this video. So this is what that looks like up close. Actually, a couple of these need to be a little bit deeper. Looks great to me. All right, so that's how to make raised hubs on a premium Bible with Navy Horween Chrome Excel. So in the next part, I'm going to be doing stamping. And for that video, I'm going to use a different leather just because I'm planning on just blind stamping this leather. And I want to share some tips and tricks for how to hot foil stamp, which is a much more technically difficult process. Blind stamping is relatively easy. You just need the same temperature that you use for hot foil stamping, but you just do like multiple hits, getting your imprint deeper and deeper. So I'm not gonna show that because I don't think I don't think I would be sharing anything that is particularly groundbreaking. But for the next part, we will be doing hot foil stamping on a cowhide cover. And I'll pull out my Kingsley and show you that and show you how I get that stamping nice and straight with some, a lot of tips and tricks shared. Well, thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you are not subscribed. I'm going to be continuing this series, and I'm spending a lot of time, putting in the effort to do all of these videos. So I would appreciate a subscription. Also check me out on Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well, XVD Bibles and Stationery. I post very often on Instagram. So thank you for watching. This is Ethan from XVD Bibles.